Kim and I were gonna come and have like follow our rules, but welcome to ADHD TV. And
Right.
the conversation just got so good in the back end while I was eating my sandwich, talking about my baby girl's birthday. She's 5. That we decided to just hit record. And so
Yeah.
where we at in the conversation is talking about having autists for children and the fact that they're going to be here probably with you forever.
Right.
And this
No,
is not.
somebody was asking me, like, how do you feel about the habit empty nest? I'm like, what fuck what whose nest is empty?
Who?
Like it's just not wise to turn him, my son is 18, turn him out into the world. There are, for number one, he has asynchronous development. So, like some skills, he's operating at a very high level. Other skills, like some very basic things, I have to, we have to take time and just kind of work through those things with him and like showing him why certain things are important. And no amount of trying to rush that is going to speed that process up. That's just not going to work.
Not
And
at all.
so there would be no emptiness for a while. And so you and I were talking about like when we do this decolonizing, you were just saying when you do this kind of work, we see how ridiculous all this stuff is, all these mandates to push them out and make them like struggle on their own. He would end up right back here.
And then feel worse for it, worse for the
Yes,
wear,
he would.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of promoting the whole, like I said, so like, anybody that follows me, you guys know I'm like, I'm in Atlanta. I urban homestead. I got a little tiny house that we had built for my first daughter. I bought an RV recently, and I'm like, one more RV, and me and my kids never need to leave the land, right? Like we're pretty much good. I can get a third RV, live out here, rent out the front. There's like so many options when you have that. Um, and if you send your kid out to do this, and it's bullshit, especially during late stage capitalism. Like, because
Yes,
truth
yes.
of the matter is I could not survive. Like right now,
No,
if I had to
no.
get up, go get a job, and pay the rent that they're requiring at 45, I'll be 45 in April. I would not actually be able to do what I was able to accomplish when I came here in 2005.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Would not. It
mm-hmm.
would be impossible, right? And when you kind of accomplish certain things, like this idea of an American dream, I was talking to my friend, and this is what I was about to tell you, is like I was blessed. Like my house right here, the owner shout out to Joanne, who actually saw me, wanted to help me make my dreams come true. This woman, owner, financed my house to me for
Mm-hmm.
$35,000.
Mm.
Okay. Because I tell people my house is paid off because I'm really transparent, but I'm like, I think that people think
That's amazing.
it is. I think that people think about today's prices, right? And I'm like, no, oh, I had
Uh-huh.
a blessing. Like 35,000.
Right.
I took one of my year tax returns, gave her $5,000 down. I was like, yes, I pay $600 a month until I
Mm-hmm.
paid it off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so when those things were done, right? Like, okay, so the car got paid off, right? Like the house got paid off. The first kid is through college. I was like, this is what they have us killing ourselves for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
nothing
Mm-hmm.
changed. Let me tell you, Dr. Kim,
Mm-hmm.
nothing changed. I still have taxes. I still have every single thing. I just don't have a mortgage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you sell this dream, and very specifically to children, because I know in the beginning I said, like with autistic children, spare me because I know people are going to be like, "Oh, you're being ableist." Like, yeah, no. What I'm saying is, it is unrealistic to ask for people that already need, like you said, have asynchronous net. My daughter, my child has high support needs in one area and very low
Right.
support needs in others.
Right. Yes. Yes.
But the outside world doesn't give a fuck about none of those needs.
No, it doesn't. It does
It,
not.
it
It
demands
does
your
not.
performance. So when you send these kids out here to do this and this American dream that's being sold because it's marketing, back to our other conversations of United States being a business, you send them out there. Tell them they could do these things. They're capable. They're able. Da 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 da
Right.
da. This is how this works. And then they go out there, like you said. If you send your son out there, and then they need to come back in 5 years, you're worse for the wear. Now you've been out there. You've been beat up.
Right.
Told you're not good enough. You've actually had to deal with ableism. And then you kind of come
Right.
home to mom feeling like a failure.
Right. And you probably are not halfway taking your medication. Because if you're struggling trying to work a job, trying to deal with if you got roommates, if you live in a state where you can have roommates,
Ooh.
um, because I know like in Kansas, I don't know if it's Kansas City, but there are limits on how many people you can live with that are not related to you.
Are you
But you know
serious?
exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to look it up to get the exact information on that. But I think that started like about 2 years ago. And so, um,
I'm Googling.
it's, and so, yeah, thank you. And so, assuming that you're in a place where you can have a lot of roommates, um, and then like some of these states, they still have laws on the book about what do you call it? What's the it's not a boudoir. What's the word? It's where a lot of women, the brothel. They still have brothel laws on the books. So if they can get roommates and their roommates aren't like unhinged, so you wade through all that, and then you still have your doctor's appointments. My son periodically has to see an occupational therapist and has to see like a developmental doctor, like
Right.
all these different things. Why would I turn him out to the world with no support from
Correct.
home? It just doesn't make sense.
And for me, this is why I go so hard about community.
Uh-huh.
Because
Yes.
the reality is like I said, I'll be 45 in April. And if nature's laws take place, my children will bury me. That's that's just how it's
Uh-huh.
supposed to be. And
Uh-huh.
I'm an older parent, right? This kid is gonna be 12 when I'm turning 45.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I let them know that. Like realistically speaking here, I'm gonna be a senior citizen and you guys
Yes.
will
We're
still not have
geriatric.
you will not have a fully developed brain. Like,
Right. Yes. Yes.
let's just be
And that
honest about it.
matters.
And that freaking matters, right? So, what does that look like when we're talking about community building, when we're talking about neurodiverse leadership, when we're talking about decolonization? It's like, what people are we putting in place? Are we empowering neurodiverse people to be able to do the things that you're talking about in
Right.
a group setting? Can we hold each
Right.
other accountable for that? Can we all have one doctor, right? That's like, hey, we're taking care of this group of people and like they take care. There's a lot of different options, right? Some
And
type of an
so
accountability that happens where when you're actually understood, when your needs are understood, and the basis of that community is to have your needs being met. I think that there's something there. There's something.
and I had tinkered with this before. Somebody mentioned this the other day on TikTok about like a concierge kind of
Ooh,
situation, um, where people could know they could go get like a one-stop shop. And what that made me think about is how, you know,
I'd be scared for a
yeah,
monopoly on that without the decolonization part on it.
right, yeah, right. It would take a special kind of understanding of the world, because that could easily turn into something cult-like.
Very much so.
Um, but the thing is, because we do not have these communities in place, and one of the reasons why we do not have the communities in place is because white people in particular, do not want to grapple with this white supremacy delusion. They just do not. And so there's a lot of cutting off their nose to spite their face in terms of how neurodivergent people could be helped. But what ends up happening is they farm out pieces of themselves
Mm,
to this capitalist dream. Like you take a piece over here that's going to school, you take a piece over here that's making you work hard, you take a piece over here that's dealing with abusive parents, you take a piece over here that's dealing with so-called friends who are taking from you or other family members who are taking. So making them pay taxes, making them participate in society this way. And so you farm out all these different pieces of yourself so that you don't get to just exist and be a whole person.
and you're
Um,
split. So
mhm.
split. I said, then you wind up so split. I'm just thinking
You
about
st-
like
yeah,
integration of all those parts, right? My website,
Mhm.
like it's all shadow work. That seems to be like the buzzword, and I'm like, okay, I've been doing that
Mhm.
for a while now. Um, but that's what it is, right? We do farm out parts, like oh, and we ignore things, especially when you can move up those
Yes.
hierarchies of whiteness. Like oh, if you could
Yes.
afford this sort of
Right.
school, that's not actually meeting these needs. It's still not a community
Right.
based thing.
No, it's not.
It's
No.
a capitalist
No.
base. Oh, you could afford to send your child away and pretend that their needs are being met. Great,
Right. Right. Right.
and they're still
And we
extracting
were we were
resources.
in, we were in a situation like that in middle school. We didn't send our child away, but we sent them to a school where they said that they address these particular needs, but they don't. What they do uh, is they provide a place for wealthy white people to send their kids to say that they're doing something to address their child's needs.
Right.
That's what it's there for, where you can tuck your kid away in this situation and say, oh, well, my child goes to Curry Ingram Academy. I'll call it out. And
Mm,
my child can, we're going to Curry Ingram Academy, but you treated my black son like shit.
right.
Um, you, for having needs that we described in the application very clearly, and the needs that you say that you address. So that's the thing about like private schools is that they can pretend to be all these things and they can do really good marketing and still be very abusive, very cruel, very unkind, and actually exacerbate the needs and make things a lot worse.
Right.
Um, and let me go back for a little bit. The way you and I came into this conversation was we were trying to figure out what we were going to, like frame how we were going to talk about this today
I
or what
know.
we were going to talk about today. And, what I was thinking is, and this applies to what we were just talking about previously, but when we look back, so if we're looking at this, we're taking the aerial view, we're looking at this like anthropologist looking down on like this environment, and we think about we're raking over the coals, we're raking over the bones,
Mm,
we're looking at the artifacts of March 6, 2024, where Desiree and Kimberly were together, and we look at the artifacts of the situation and we look at the surroundings and we look at what was said and we look at what was done, what do those artifacts suggest happened here? What were we doing here?
and now you're gonna make me cry again. Like it's like no, because I do want to cry, and I'm not gonna do that here. But
It sounds like there's a cry to be had in this conversation
there's
somewhere.
a cry to be had. It ain't gonna be on here. Like okay,
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm,
not on here.
mm-hmm,
But there is a cry to be had because when you say that, right? Like I am really big on legacy, right? And not in the capitalistic sense of like how much money, how much this can I leave, right? My mom, and I believe in the continuation of generations, right? And unfortunately, immigration, enslavement, all of these things impact your lineage and legacy, right? You don't know enough about your people, right? It's March. So I've been, I get into my feels about being Irish just off the heels of Black History Month, being Black and Irish, these two very deeply resilient groups, so resilient against colonization, right?
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and both so deeply impacted about your lineage being carried on because of the impacts of colonization, right? So when I think about it, it's like I'm starting so fresh, right? Opposed to white Americans, let's say, white United States Americans who like, I've been here since the Mayflower. And I'm like, that's your legacy. Like your legacy is
Mm,
colonization, right? Where for me,
mm-hmm,
it's like when I look back over my own mother's life who died in a car accident in 2009, and
mm,
like I'm carrying on that legacy simply by existing,
mm-hmm,
just existing. If I did nothing, right? But my mom was a community activist. She was an AIDS activist. Like she was always in some type of activism my whole life. And we had our own ups and downs. And I've shared stories about that anywhere. But it's still that, right? Like it's beautiful that I could sit down and look over her life, good, bad, and different, see all the parts of her, and still there's this tangible legacy, right? Like, and when you talk about scraping over the bones, for me everything is sacred, right? And then I get like the visual, and it's like the bones, the dirt, the land, all the things that we're connected to. Like, yes, what will my kids say about me? That matters. I don't understand why
mm-hmm.
people are not worried about that. Like, what will your children say you did? What did you teach them? What will they carry into this next world, right? Like, my work directly impacts how they will move in the world, how they will then impact the next generation as well.
Right.
So,
That's right.
to the answer of all of that, like, I don't know if there is one, right? Like, I love the work that we do together. I love that when, they scrape the bones of the internet, somewhere somebody will see this and be like, those people try to make a difference. They really try
Yeah.
to open your mind up. And like, for me, it's like, because back to the cult thing, right? Like, I have the online community and all of the things. And I'm like, if you don't feel safe somewhere, if the person thinks that they're the end all be all, get out.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a
Mm-hmm.
cult.
Mm-hmm.
They're not,
Yeah.
there's no space for you. If you are in any sort of a relationship interaction and you don't exist in it, get out.
Right.
It is not a
Right.
safe place. So I think when they rake over the bones of us, right, and all of our accounts and ledgers, I hope it shines a brighter light.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
hope it gives another piece to that puzzle or another equation, right? Since we talk about the accounts and ledgers and business of enslavement and business of colonization, I hope that it adds more depth to the equation. That's what I hope.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask the question a different way. This is
Okay.
good. Yes, me too. I agree with that. I just thought about it a different way. Because I
Okay.
was thinking about an episode of The Simpsons
Hmm.
where I think Bart or Lisa, one of them became a deity um, because of something, an artifact that somebody found. But I'm not talking about like in terms of us becoming deities. But let's say, for shits and giggles, that the only remnant that they could find of our society were the recordings that you and I have done.
Mm, yummy.
What would that look like?
Mm, okay. What would that look like? So, like, okay, let me ask some clarifying questions. Are you saying throughout the span of the internet time, the only recordings are yours and mine?
Yep.
Like, so we're
Yep.
the storytellers?
We're the story. Yeah.
I like
It's
that.
fun to think about.
I like that. But you know what? It is something to think about. And back to the deity and back to the cult, that's exactly what colonization looks like, right? Like, you have to check your ego. And so imagine, I mean,
Yeah.
I could say anything and it would be truth
Uh-huh.
because
Right, right.
there's nothing and no one to challenge that. So
Right.
to the answer of that is that I wouldn't be upset with it because I think that we have a lot of expansive conversations and we see the
Mm-hmm.
whole of humanity. And when I say humanity, I'm talking about like the land, the animals, the insects,
Mm-hmm.
the people. So I wouldn't hate it, but I wouldn't love that either because I really value
Uh-huh.
other people's perspectives, right? Like,
Sure, of course. Yes, yes, yes.
but let's say this is all of our life story. Let's just say,
Uh-huh.
they didn't know any other work that I've done, or any other work that you've done. I'd be fucking proud of the work that you and I have done together. And I would love for my
Yeah.
children to be like, this is our parent. And look at
Yeah.
right there, here comes the
So
cry. I am getting off of here. God, I'm too old for this shit. I'm on my Danny Glover's. The closer I
you're
get
just
to
the right
45,
age.
I'm like, oh my Lord, I'm too old for this shit. I'm an emotional gangster. All right, listen. Yeah, no,
So
I'd be fucking proud. I'd be proud. I'd be proud for my children. And that is important to me. And I don't think as parents in a colonial mindset, we are so fucking hell bent on our children making us proud because they're
yes,
property that we do
yeah,
not think enough. Are we doing anything to make our children proud?
right. No, no, yes, 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 yes. This goes back to a conversation that Erin and I have sort of tagged each other back and forth on TikTok when we were talking about elders and how,
Mm,
elders being part. because I always thought about like what we do for elders, but then like Aaron got me to thinking about what elders do for us
Correct.
and what they leave us with and the wisdom that they share. And then it got me to thinking about how like in retirement, you fantasize about working like a dog all your life, and then the reward is this retirement. You drive off in the sunset in your Winnebago, but you drive off with all that wisdom and all that knowledge and all that care that's not left behind in the community. And so it's not just you know um, I mean, that interaction between the elders, be it your parents or whoever, and the generations that are to come, that is so important. So, the reason why maybe one of the reasons why I asked that question in the way that I ask it is because I want thinking about the things that we talk about and I'm thinking about the breadth of what we're talking about and what we express. And so, like, even after, like, right after asking the question, you start to talk about like biodiversity and relationships. And so that if somebody picked it up and all they had were these recordings from StreamYard or wherever, then they would know that somebody in this moment in time was concerned about these things
Mm,
and how these things come together and how these things unite and how these things separate.
I like that. And yeah, I think I think if we as elders, which is crazy, because in my mind, I'm 25. I,
In my body.
you can't tell me nothing.
Oh, right,
Then I
right.
realized how
Yeah.
very uncool I am to my kids. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Like
There's that
I
reality check.
I am in fact an elder. Like, right? Like in this very and I don't even know how I got here. I don't even know when it switched, right? Because I've been
Right,
having children since my teens and I knew I was uncool to my kid even when I was in my 20s, like because your parents are just uncool to you. But
right,
I did not feel like an elder. I definitely still felt like
right.
a 20 something just happened to have a kid. But there is a switch that happens where you're like, I think you have to take that on, right? Like I think
Yeah.
you have to accept that. Like, oh, I am that person. I am that
It
person.
definitely is an acceptance. It isn't you just falling, like you have to accept that you are
Yeah.
an elder.
Like,
And
yeah,
I think a lot of people are actively rejecting it.
I agree. I
Yeah.
don't even know how we got here, but I do agree, right? Like I said, I think that if we kind of got here to this point and we actually gave a damn what our kids thought about us, I think that
Hmm.
alone would be such a cultural shift. Instead of like, fuck them,
Right.
they need to work, they need to worry about what I think of them or they need to make me
Right.
proud. It's like, why would they even want to do that if they aren't proud of you? Right? Like
Right.
why would I want to prove myself to somebody I don't respect? I don't see as
Right.
somebody, where I don't know. As a kid,
And
I think that would help bring confidence
somebody
back.
somebody I don't really want to be in a relationship with, because that's what it comes down to for me, is
Yes,
that we don't really want relationships with them.
no,
We want to control them.
correct. And that is a very interesting position to be in, right? Because we have this colonial rule of parenting, right? Like, I'm just supposed to, which goes right back to how we began this, I'm just supposed to get you prepared to go out in the world and make money.
And speaking of going out in the world and and making money, I just pulled up this AP article. I want to go back to something we were talking about
Okay.
earlier. We talked about pushing the kids out. So the title of this article comes from AP News. Kansas City suburbs ban on having more than three roommates challenged in court. So let me just give you a little snippet from it. A Kansas City suburbs rule prohibiting more than three unrelated roommates from living together is being challenged in court. This is from May 10th, 2023. A property management company that wants to be able to rent homes to several roommates, and a homeowner who said that Shawnee's ban made her living arrangement illegal last year because her son's girlfriend was living with the family at the time, filed a lawsuit. And a little bit
Mm,
more. The rule that Shawnee passed last year prohibits more than 3 unrelated people from living together in a single residence. The only exception for more people living together is if they are all related. If even one person in a home isn't related to everyone else in the household, the city considers everyone in the household to be unrelated.
Yo, the way they write these, they are so crafty, right? Because you're
Clever.
basically
Yes.
like, I want people to really pay attention on how you're making, like, let's wrap this up with my brain. Like, for a world, for a country that claims to have family values, it's
Mhm.
interesting to fucking make family situations illegal, right? And when
Mhm.
I am talking to white folks about decolonizing and releasing it, I'm like, racism stops your liberation every time.
Mhm.
Because indigenous people to their own lands were illegal family units, right?
Right.
Black people who didn't even have to be here, was drug over here, were illegal family units, right? Couldn't get married, illegitimate, all of the things that you could find to bastardize and make us illegal.
Right.
Now biting you in your ass. Like,
It is. It is.
because that's
And
generational
the
living. I have 3 children. So here's how I'm doing this math, and let me know if I'm wrong. I have 3 children. I own my property. I'm on a 1/4 acre. Again, I have a tiny house. I have an RV. I have my home is 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. It's a 1950s, 1,100 square feet, modest size home. So let's say I were a renter though, and I have 3 children, and each of my 3 children have partners. So I move into this back house because I'm old and they gotta take care of me. Like, that's the deal. I'm setting it up so they could take care of me and not be in too much of a burden. So let's say the 3 kids stay in this house right here, right? Because these are the 3 kids that are at home. My eldest is already off in the world. So each bedroom, each one of them have a partner. So now those 3 kids aren't related.
well, I'm trying to let me see something here. Hold on one second.
Because I need
So
clarity.
according to this Kansas City thing, I think, I'm not for sure that this relates to renters.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Because
So if I were a renter and those 3 kids,
uh-huh.
right? These 3 kids, let's say these 3 kids decide, you know what, this is late stage capitalism, because like I said, the eldest is out in the world being
Right.
successful.
They
These
they would not be
three
considered
children,
related to you.
they would not be considered related. So if they
I don't
wanted to
think
go
so. I
out in
mean,
the
according to
world
this.
and rent a house, right? There's 3 bedrooms. Let's say they did not want to be here in this house. What I'm trying to make an understanding, gain clarity on, if my 3 children wanted to go out in the world and go rent a 3 bedroom home, right? And each one of them had a partner, which would make 6 living in the home, but like they're partnered. What you're saying is because the 3 kids would be allowed to be roommates because they're
Right.
related. But once one of
Right.
them brought a partner in, now we're saying that 4 people are not related.
That's my understanding of how it works. That's
Oh.
how I've understood it from the beginning.
Like the hashtag boy math, girl math, colonial math.
It is Colombia. So what's interesting, the reason why I brought up the thing about the rental is because there's layers of shit happening here.
Hmm.
Because if this only applies to rental, so again, people who have a certain amount of wealth, it still keeps you out of their business,
Correct.
right? Because they're not going to be renting anyway.
Right.
But we're talking about people who have to rent from other people.
Eventually, that will trickle over into mortgages.
It will. It will.
There's no
Yes.
way for
Yes.
it to just stay in a rental market. You understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely
No.
going to stay out of that top percent of the pyramid scheme of whiteness, but it will
Right.
100% lean over into mortgages as far as who can co-sign, as
Well,
far as who can be
but
on a mortgage.
when the way you ram it through is you make it about renters
Yeah, but you start
because
there
people don't
because
care.
people
Like
don't care about renters because I make
no.
enough money to go get a mortgage until you don't.
Right. And it's becoming more and more that, right? Because let me see, there was something here about and like I have to look this up because I still have to wrap my brain around it. So the premise is that they were trying to eliminate situations where homeowners are treating their homes like apartment buildings and renting rooms to several people. That's
Child, please.
that's a load of crap.
Child,
Right. I
please.
know. It is.
Yeah, I was so
Um
sorry. I also, when you
uh
told me this, I Googled, and there's a lot of states that have that. So if anybody wants to do it, all you have to do is Google roommate max laws.
okay.
And like, because even in New York, it says landlords are entitled to set reasonable, whatever they just deem reasonable, limits on the number of occupants per rental unit. As a general
Right.
rule, that's two persons per bedroom plus one more. And there's just a
Right.
few different others. And then, like, because I understand the mindset of quite often, why people like, we think about immigrants. Right. Like, and I know because I grew
Right.
up in white culture. So you think about immigrants. Well, them goddamn Mexicans tend to an apartment. That's the thing. Right. But then I want us to remember, because I'm a New York City born and raised person, and my grandparents came over
Uh-huh.
from Ireland. If you are white in America, at one point in time, your family were immigrants. Like,
Right. Right.
and it's just taken so long to impact white people. And like now they're sitting there like, what are we going to do? And we've been looking like, Because I lived in Little Italy. My first apartment was in Little Italy in the Bronx. It was 600 square feet without a closet. And this is a neighborhood that was made for Catholic Italian people. Them folks was having
Mm-hmm.
babies, fam. The Catholics, like
Mm-hmm.
real Catholic, there was no, we don't believe in birth control. Like you're just gonna keep
Right,
having
exactly.
children. So if you think about it, right, like your own family, this is what I mean about like how I'm like, I need white people to really think about how they would have, like knowing their history, tracing it back to elders and ancestors, right? And like how those that have become white don't tell their own history and stories, how they were relegated
Right.
to certain neighborhoods and had to live 7 to a 600 bedroom, 600 square foot apartment. That's one bedroom, fam. It's one bedroom.
Right.
It was literally a bedroom, a living room, and the space for the living room, like the width of it, was literally I could barely get two fingers on either side of my three-seater couch.
And so what they call them affinity groups. So when
Mhm.
you come over from other countries, um, there's a whole other conversation about how it's set up to help them succeed in the pipeline or whatever. But you come over from other countries, you're part of an affinity, considered part of an affinity group that helps you get set up, gets established, gets you a place to live. So it's a way stop on the way to something else. So it's a very important part of the pipelines that people use to have the upward mobility that they seek when they come to the United
Right.
States.
This is just insane. Like the more I start thinking about these systems, and yeah, I like, and it kind of goes back to, I hope this is what we leave behind, even if it's just these
Yeah,
conversations, right? Is
yeah,
to make
yeah.
people think because I'm also okay with this late stage capitalism because I'm like, how long did you think that this was going to last? Like,
Right. Yeah.
it's a pyramid scheme, and
Yeah.
it has to go away, right? Like, because is at the bottom, right? People keep
Hmm.
saying like we have to really pay attention, like to your deity words. It's like we are divine people, each and every single one of us. We are divine. We are we are divine, every single person. So when you keep saying things, you're speaking a whole lot into the universe. We want equity. We want an equitable society. Equity is at the bottom, sweetie. The
Hmm.
only
Hmm.
thing that is universal is poverty.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
and then they make you hate poverty, right? I've had that kind
Hmm.
of conversation. But equity exists at the bottom of that pyramid scheme. It's like where all of those things where you can't leverage anything, where you can't move up in those hierarchies of whiteness, where you just cannot
Right.
access the pinnacle. And like, so I'm okay with it. And this is why I preach so much with the community building, because I'm like, you're going to have to dismantle all these frameworks that you've been given from colonial thoughts. And you're going to have to reimagine, right? You and I talk about
Right.
that. It's a reimagining. What does neural diverse leadership look like? What does
Hmm.
community look like when you put people's needs first? What does communal living look like, right? Like
Hmm.
people are trying to go back to the land and they're doing the things they saw it coming because they planned for it, right? It's illegal to collect rainwater. You can't have certain kind of animals on your land.
They
Da, da,
saw
da,
it
da, da.
coming. You can't
They
have
know that.
roommates not related.
Can't have roommates who are not related. And like you're literally taking away people's ways of surviving. So
No,
you're
you're boxing people
literally
into very limited options.
very limited options and you're relegating people to die at the cost of capitalism, which again,
Hmm.
I'm always been was always the way of this economy when you start with a slave economy.
Right.
Where did people think it was going to go?
Right. And they see, I think a lot of people imagine themselves as something as existing outside the system, but this is it. This is what it is. It's never not been this. It has never
Mhm.
departed from that philosophy, from those values, from those beliefs, from those intentions. It has never departed from that.
It's never departed from its company culture, which I hope other people
No,
go
that's
back
right. That's right.
and
It's
catch our
never departed. That's right. Go back and about shareholders, stakeholders. It's never departed from the company culture. You know, it's like somebody coming in, you starting a new job, and you're trying to bring the cake and the snacks and the thing, you know, to get people together in the break room and get people together after work. If that's not what they do there, they don't do that
not the
there.
company
And if
culture.
they do it, it's for a certain type of performance. But so this goes back to a conversation that I had with a so-called leadership coach, and they were telling me that they were doing this great work where they were working with middle management, you know, and this was a white woman, so that context does matter. They were doing this work with middle management and getting middle management to see, you know, how to work with other people. And I said, that's interesting. How does the CEO feel about it? And they were like, well, you know, I don't work with them at that level. Well, you ain't doing shit.
Yeah,
Because if you don't have it, going back to company culture, if you don't have the blessing and the resources and the coercive power, if you don't have the power from the CEO, then here's what you're doing. This is all you're doing. You are, of course, getting contracts. Cool, that's your business, whatever. But other people's business too. You're getting your contracts. But what you're also doing is you're creating additional tension between middle management and the employees. You're
mm,
creating extra labor for middle management, and Black people tend to be stuck in middle management. You are now creating new mandates, not only for middle management, but also for the employees, and creating resentments because now you're enforcing this equity and inclusion that you're not going to put resources behind,
right.
you're not going to follow up with, you're just creating resentments and creating work for people because there's no real commitment at the top for this to amount to anything. So
Correct.
you ain't doing shit.
You ain't doing shit.
No,
Like
you
no,
do. No, you're not. I mean, you're getting your contracts. That's good. I'm not gonna hate it. You know, like whatever. But
yeah.
let's just be clear. And the thing is, I just had lots of questions for this person. I was like, but look at the damage you leave in your wake.
They
Like,
don't see that though, right? Because when you're talking about supremacy culture and we're talking about these pillars, right? It's individualism, and I'm the only one. Look at me. I came
right,
to this company and I was the only one that could bring
right,
diversity, equity, and inclusion. You just figured out racism existed in 2020. How are you
right.
charging the like taking the
And you
lead?
and you done left a whole chemtrail in your wake.
Everybody, everybody dying. And the people at the top of that pyramid scheme are just like, whatever, just let her play. Right.
Right.
Let
No,
her
they don't
continue.
care. And I, needless to say, the conversation was pretty flat when we finished. But I
Mhm.
just couldn't go along with it because it just didn't make sense in the way that she wanted me to it to make
Of course.
sense to me. I couldn't celebrate what she was. I couldn't celebrate it
No.
because all I could feel from it is as a person who's been in middle management. All I can feel is another mandate, another obligation to have to fulfill, to strut around and use language to talk to people a certain way, talk to certain people, but also get in trouble when people push back on that language.
Right. And
Like
really, I
all
think
I
that
saw was problems.
because it was problems. And like, because I don't want to be the people that are griping as we round this up, right? Because I'm like, well, what are we gonna do? Brr, 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 brr. And we're all in the midst of election and all this other shit, and people really think that they're gonna fix the
Mhm.
system, which is insane to me. But I'm like, okay, enjoy that. The
Mhm.
whole point is reimagining and recreating new worlds and new systems. That's it. There
Right.
is no
Right.
fixing a system that works. This
Right.
system works. When you hear those people like we look, they love it because it's working. Like,
It's not broken. It's not
it's not
broken.
broken. It is 100% working. And when you start with a system that the foundation is under hell, right? Because like if I did not have an awareness, and I shout out my friend Jason who brought this awareness to me at 20 something years old, I would swear, right? Because I come to this colonial project with an immigrant's mindset.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
did not grow up in Black American culture.
Mhm.
I'm Black.
Mhm.
Like that is just an obvious fact, right? Like
Oh,
our
you blackity black.
oh, I'm militantly Black now. But what I'm saying is that like it is obvious. Here's what it is, at least because like people, I'm not racially ambiguous. I'm ethnically ambiguous. I'll give you that. You may think
Mhm.
I'm a Puerto Rican or I'm an Italian or like a couple different ethnicities.
Mhm.
But here's I will never be mistaken for white nowhere where I go. So
Right.
I always walked the world knowing I was a non-white person. Put it that way. And me, I knew I was Black. But I was raised in Irish immigrant American culture. My grandparents did not come over here in the 1600s. My grandparents came over here in the 1900s when they were in their
Mhm.
like 30s. Like my mom's a first generation American. I'm just a second generation American. So when I look at my family, back to the whole like tying this all together, when I look at my family, what you want to be proud about, what legacies are you leaving? I'm looking at my grandparents who left Sligo, had a family land there, potato farmers and all of that shit. Came to Manhattan, living in the projects on First Avenue, with a bunch of damn kids going to Catholic school, and each generation has done better, right? My
Mhm.
mother
Mhm.
was the first of that generation to get college educated. The generation that came behind her, we're all college educated. We're all homeowners. We're all married. I am the fucking American dream
Uh-huh. You are. Yeah.
from an
Yeah.
immigrant standpoint, right? Like that's why when I say I'm like, I promise you, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams on both sides,
Mhm. Mhm.
from
Mhm.
being a descendant of chattel slavery and being an immigrant. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I take that mantle up proudly. But I can
Yeah.
also challenge the system. So it's like very interesting to me when
Right.
I watch people who are not as successful in capitalism as they could be, should be, or whatever, champion this colonial project on. I'm like, it's only because you started at such depth of deprivation, you think that this is going to
Mhm.
work. When you think
Mhm.
in a different sort of way, when you say, you know what, this system is not serving everybody, and it could. There's a
It
system
could very well could.
that
Yeah.
could serve every single one in an equitable way. That is a system that you need to be building upon
Right.
because it already
Right.
exists. And while you're building upon that, this one's going to crumble. It's crumbling.
It is crumbling. It's unsustainable. It is a
It
house
is
of
not
cards.
sustainable. It is not sustainable.
Um, so I want to step back for a moment and issue this challenge to people who are listening
Yeah.
is if someone were to like everything had been wiped out and the only thing that remained were snapshots of your life, snapshots of your interactions with people. What would it say in terms of like this conversation we're having about the white supremacy delusion? You know, would it show that when you had to make the tough decisions, urgency creeped in and perfection creeped in and right to comfort creeped in and individualism creeped in. For example, we've been talking about our kids and doing right by our kids. Does it show that our values were that no, you push them out, you make them go out, and you make them as have an individualistic kind of struggle while you sit up here comfortably drawing on your retirement? Does it
Mm.
show that that is what conversation with those artifacts say that this society was having based upon the artifacts from your own life?
My God. All right, I'm done right there. I hope you take that challenge.
Challenge.
You could find Dr. Kim and answer that on TikTok. Dr. Kim, I hope you ask that on there too. You can write that comment underneath here,
Okay,
or you
I
can,
have to artifacts. I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to. Yeah.
yeah.
I like that one
I
myself.
I love that one, and I'm going to pose my own, like like in a simple like question. For me, is like, why? What about you would make your children proud?
Oh,
That's it. That's it for me. What about you would make your children proud? Answer me that question. You can find me at DesireeBStevens.com. You can find Dr. Kim at Dr. Kimberly Douglas with two S's.com. And we are our names every single place we go.
I want to come back and answer that next time because I have a
Okay.
very simple answer.
Well, I'm going to ask it on TikTok. So go on then and answer it right there. And then we can share it
Yeah,
right here.
I will do that. I would
Okay.
do that. I think that's a great question. Thank you for asking.
No problem. For these Thank you for these conversations because, like,
Thank
now I'm
you.
gonna come to it with a different view of like the artifacts in our bones. All right, you're gonna make me
Yeah.
cry again. I gotta go cry apparently because
I'm about to fucking cry. And I don't even know why.
I'm about to go cry and go get stuff ready for my baby's birthday party at school because she's 5 and my baby is a southern little. She's a country girl. She's an ATL girl. She's like, you got to bring cake to my fans, my fans. So I'm gonna bring my baby some cake for her fans, and
Well, tell us a happy birthday.
I shall. And I will talk to you next time. Thank you for
Okay,
gracing
take
me.
care.
Bye.